The Asian country, which is now the world's second largest economy, saw its economy explode over the past 30 years. But now it is investing far beyond its borders, and Africa has become a new focus for China. Chinese investment in Africa was around $75 million in 2013 and rose to about $2.7 billion by 2019. So, are the Chinese simply giving free money to Africa, or is there another intention behind their investment in railroads on the continent? To understand why China is building railroads in Africa, we need to go back in history a bit. In 1955, the Bandung Conference took place, where leaders from 29 Asian and African nations gathered with the hope of working toward the development of their nations. In this way, the Tazara Railway emerged, providing landlocked Zambia with an 860 kilometers connection to Tanzania, means to export its copper to the global market without crossing territories governed by white minorities. More than 30% of China's investment in Africa is in the construction sector, and China has become the most important source of development on the continent. In the past, there was railway imperialism, where European nations that colonized Africa built railroads there, but now no one is really investing as much as China. They built a huge high-speed rail network in just a few years, and now they are bringing that expertise to Africa. Among their largest investments in East Africa are the Djibouti Railway in Ethiopia and the Kenya Railway. A $4 billion line is being built by the Chinese across Ethiopia, extending more than 750 kilometers from the capital, Addis Ababa, to the port of Djibouti. With commercial operations beginning in 2018, it is now the backbone of Ethiopia's national railway network. The construction involved modernizing an old interior railway to Chinese electrified railway standards, making it the first of its kind in Africa. The locomotives are supplied by Chinese contractors and are built to withstand high altitudes. One promise of these railroads was to provide convenient, air-conditioned travel, but unfortunately the number of passengers was not as high as expected, with only 84,000 people riding the line in 2019. But the long-term potential of the railway lies in its ability to transport goods. More than 90% of Ethiopia's international trade goes through Djibouti, and the new line carries roughly 1/4 of all Ethiopia's imports and exports. Even so, freight volumes still haven't come close to reaching full capacity, and unsurprisingly, the railway is struggling to turn a profit. 70% of the project was financed with loans from the Chinese state bank, Exim Bank, and in 2019, combined revenues from passengers and cargo amounted to only $40 million, well below the $70 million operating cost. And the problem is, if you don't have enough cargo or passengers using the railway, you obviously can't generate sufficient revenue to repay the loans. This is where the Chinese plan comes in. In Kenya, the standard gauge railway was inaugurated in 2017, covering a distance of 480 kilometers. The nearly $4 billion high-speed railway is the largest infrastructure project in Kenya since it gained independence in 1963. Construction, led by the China Road and Bridge Corporation, involved building long viaducts and, as one might expect, constructing a project of this scale through Kenya's nature reserves proved very challenging. 2 sections of the railway that pass through national parks face protests from conservationists over concerns that they could threaten wildlife. In response, the designers added 14 wildlife corridors and elevated sections along the track. Now complete, the railway is a game-changer for trade and transportation in the region. The passenger service has reduced travel time from Mombasa to Nairobi from over 10 hours to about 5 hours, with an economy fare of $10. In its second year of service, the Kenya Railway transported 1.7 million passengers, and its freight service carried approximately 5 million tons of goods using locomotives provided by China. China's approach to infrastructure development is attractive to African countries because it not only provides financing, but also acts like a turnkey bank that can supply everything needed to complete a project. When dealing with China, things are simple. You don't have to worry about a thing they do at all, but if you don't pay them back, there will be problems. China's Exim Bank financed 90% of the project, and now Kenya is struggling to repay its loans. And because both railways are built to Chinese standards, any major upgrades or even parts that need replacing will have to come from China. But China's investments in foreign infrastructure go far beyond these railways. Around the world, it is financing the construction of hundreds of infrastructure projects through its massive route-building initiative. Based on its own development experience, the Chinese believe in the power of infrastructure and its ability to catalyze economic activity, and they want to partner with those who share this appetite for infrastructure development in Africa. In fact, in Africa alone, it is estimated that China has secured almost half of all engineering and construction contracts. However, these contracts did not come without strings attached. The country has been accused of unfair labor practices in Africa, including bringing in its own workers instead of hiring locally. Some studies have shown that Chinese companies do hire a significant number of local employees, but top management positions are still dominated by Chinese personnel. The construction of the Ethiopian Railway employed around 20,000 local workers in Ethiopia and 5,000 in Djibouti. Rather than adopting an African standard for railway construction, they are trying to connect colonial-era tracks with modern Chinese standard lines. It's a massive undertaking that only China can manage, and it shows that China's role in African infrastructure is complicated. Relying so heavily on a single country to finance its development is a risky bet. But Africa needs basic industrial infrastructure, the creation of light industries, and even new energy sources. With the West completely ignoring investments in the African continent, China becomes the gateway to development for many African countries that see no other solutions. Consequently, China's revenue from construction projects in Africa has skyrocketed from the early 2000s until now. Although it's unclear how long the money will continue flowing, China's railways in Africa are laying the tracks for a long-term relationship between the two, sides with China's railway legacy potentially extending well beyond its own borders.